Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about the POSH Act and how Meru Accounting as an organization is determined to creating a respectful workplace. So something about the POSH Act. The POSH Act was introduced in the year 2013 and it is an act to provide protection against sexual harassment of women at workplace and for the prevention and redressal of complaints of sexual harassment and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. The Act places a legal obligation on employers to prevent and prohibit sexual harassment in the workplace. The Act lays down a procedure for filing complaints, conducting inquiries, and providing a fair opportunity to the parties involved. In simple language, the POSH Act is a weapon or a defense mechanism for people to shield them from any unwarranted or unsolicited acts, any sexual harassment that they might face at workplace. Your employer, that is Meru Accounting, is determined to eradicate all such sources that might lead to sexual harassment, and Meru Accounting is determined to create a safe workplace wherein you can approach the HR team, the ICC team, which we'll talk about further in this presentation. You can approach them anytime you feel that you are facing any act of harassment whatsoever. Now we'll talk more about this in detail. Understanding sexual harassment. There are a lot of types of sexual harassment, or a better word would be categories. Some categories are mentioned in this presentation to make you aware so that it helps you to identify what constitutes as sexual harassment and what does not. Some categories mentioned here are unwelcome sexual advances or propositions, quid pro quo sexual harassment, making inappropriate remarks or jokes, unwanted physical contact, displaying offensive or sexually suggestive material, stalking or threatening. I understand that these terms, these terminologies, these concepts might be new to many of you. Henceforth, we'll discuss some scenarios that will help you understand what exactly these concepts mean. Definitions are not enough to understand this at a greater level. Henceforth, we'll talk about some scenarios. First, let's go through a few basic definitions so that you get a perfect context of what is being discussed here. Now, what does sexual harassment actually mean? Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature that creates a hostile work environment or interferes with job performance or creates intimidation or humiliation. Now, what are sexual advances? Unwelcome and inappropriate physical, verbal, or non verbal conduct of a sexual nature. Hostile work environment is a workplace environment where sexual harassment is sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of employment and create an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Who is an aggrieved woman? Any woman employee who alleges to have been subjected to sexual harassment is an aggrieved woman. Now, the most important concept that you will ever come across when it comes to POSH, and that is the Internal Complaints Committee, mostly known as the ICC. Now, the ICC is a committee constituted under the POSH Act to receive, investigate, and redress complaints of sexual harassment. To understand simply, ICC is a committee, it's a team of 5 to 6 members. The members are employees of Meru Accounting, and they are there to address all of your issues that might come under the purview of the POSH Act. Basically, if you feel that you face sexual harassment in the office, you can approach the ICC, you can talk to them freely, and you can be sure that all of your conversations would be confidential. You can approach them, talk to them, and they will make sure that your problems are redressed properly, and they will make sure that the problems are addressed, they are tackled with a sensitive approach, and they're made confidential so that you don't face any hesitation in approaching them. Now we'll understand the types of sexual harassment with some scenarios, and we'll start with unwelcome sexual advances or propositions. Now, Mr. X, a senior accountant, frequently comments on Miss Y's appearance, makes suggestive jokes about her clothes, and tries to touch her arm or shoulder inappropriately during meetings. Miss Y feels uncomfortable and avoids Mr. X whenever possible. Now, why this constitutes as unwelcome sexual advance? Because it has been mentioned that the girl, that is the female employee, Miss Y, she feels uncomfortable. She does not like it when Mr. X inappropriately touches her. Mr. X has never taken her consent before making fun of her, making suggestive jokes about her, or before touching her. Miss Y does not like it. Miss Y is uncomfortable. The keyword here being uncomfortable. Henceforth, this constitutes unwelcome sexual advance, and this should never be done at workplace. This is not a normal behavior for employees at a workplace, and henceforth, you should stay away from this kind of behavior. Next, we have the quid pro quo sexual harassment. Now, Mr. X, a manager, tells Mrs. Y that he will only approve her leave request if she agrees to go out for drinks with him after work. Mrs. Y feels pressured and uncomfortable but worries about her leave being denied. Now, quid pro quo means you do a favor for me and I'll do a favor for you. Mr. X is somewhat compelling Mrs. Y to go out on drinks with him, to go out on a date. Otherwise, he will not approve her leave. Now, this is not fair in any way. Mrs. Y is entitled to her leave without doing any favor for anybody. Again, the keyword being pressured, uncomfortable. The female employee is not okay with this behavior, but she is worried that her leaves will not be approved. This again is not normal behavior for any employee at workplace. And once again, I'm stating Meru Accounting prohibits employees from behaving like this at the workplace. All of us have to be committed to make this workplace a safe space for everybody. Moving on, making inappropriate remarks or jokes. During a team meeting, Mr. X cracks a sexist joke about female accountants. He finds it funny, but several colleagues, including Miss Y, feel offended and uncomfortable participating in the conversation. Now, Mr. X is talking not very decent things about female accountants, female employees. Henceforth, the female colleagues, they feel offended, they feel uncomfortable. Again, notice the keyword uncomfortable. If you're making a joke and somebody does not like it, if it offends somebody, you need to put a full stop then and there. You need to apologize and you need to make sure that this behavior is not repeated in near or far future. Moving on, unwanted physical contact. While walking down the office hallway, Mr. X intentionally bumps into Miss Y, brushing his hand against her shoulder. This happens repeatedly, despite Miss Y politely indicating her discomfort. Now, Mr. X is unnecessarily brushing his hand against Miss Y's shoulder. Miss Y approaches him and tells him that she is not okay with this. She politely indicates not to do this again, but Mr. X keeps repeating his behavior. Now, when an employee is telling you, when your colleague is telling you, please don't do this to me, I don't like it, you need to make sure that that behavior is not continued because you don't have the consent of your colleague. Moving on, displaying offensive or sexually suggestive material. On the company computer, Mr. X showcases a collection of inappropriate jokes with sexual content to his colleagues, including Miss Y. Miss Y feels offended and reports the incident to the Internal Complaints Committee. Now, POSH Act, it states that you are not allowed to showcase inappropriate or sexually charged content to anybody in the office. You cannot display that kind of stuff on your laptop, on your workbook, on a paper where you take notes. You're not allowed to behave inappropriately within the office premises, and this is something everybody should make a note of. Now, last, we have stalking or threatening. After being rejected by his co-worker, Mrs. Y, Mr. X starts following her home after work and sending her threatening messages. Mrs. Y fears for her safety and files a police complaint. Now, the POSH Act is not just limited to your office premises. You cannot approach your colleague even outside of office if you think you'll behave inappropriately with them. You cannot behave inappropriately with them within office premises or out of office premises. You cannot stalk them, you cannot threaten them, you cannot approach them aggressively. Moving on, we will talk about recognizing sexual harassment, whether a scenario does constitute sexual harassment or it does not. Now, the first scenario states that a colleague asks another out for coffee. The colleague politely declines, explaining they have other plans, and the conversation ends there. Now, this is something that is okay. This is not harassment. The colleague understood that the other person does not want to go out for coffee with them. They understood, they accepted, and they just left the conversation there. They did not force the other colleague to go out with them. They did not behave aggressively. They understood the meaning of consent. Henceforth, this does not constitute sexual harassment. Talking about scenario 2, during a team celebration, someone gives a high five to a colleague who prefers a fist bump. They apologize and switch to fist bumps moving forward. Not everybody is comfortable with high fives. A lot of people, they don't prefer touching palms with the other person and they prefer a fist bump. That's their personal preference. And the colleague understood this. They did not behave inappropriately. They did not behave aggressively. They did not force the other person to give them a high five. They understood that it's not a big deal and they just gave them a fist bump and they moved forward. This is appropriate behavior. This is expected out of every employee at Meru Accounting. Moving ahead, talking about your rights under the POSH Act. You have the right to work in a safe and respectful environment. You have the right to file a complaint against sexual harassment. You have the right to confidentiality throughout the process. You also have the right to be assisted by a friend or colleague during the investigation. Identifying your rights and using them appropriately is a very big part of the POSH Act. Meru Accounting is determined to maintaining a safe space for everybody, and we insist that you use these rights appropriately. You make use of them. Don't forget them. You do have these rights, and we will support you in every way that is possible. Now, rights always come along with some responsibilities. You, as an employee at Meru Accounting, also have some responsibilities to maintain under the POSH Act. Now, you are mandated to maintain a professional and respectful work environment. You are to avoid behavior that could be construed as sexual harassment. You are compulsorily advised to report any incidents of sexual harassment that you witness. You are to cooperate with the ICC during any investigation that may happen in the future. Now we'll discuss some frequently asked questions regarding POSH so that it stays fresh in your memory. This might serve as a revision for whatever we have discussed in this video. Now, what does POSH stand for? POSH stands for Prevention of Sexual Harassment. Question number 2. Which of these is not an example of sexual harassment? Option A, a supervisor asks an employee out for coffee repeatedly after being rejected. This is definitely sexual harassment. Option B, accidentally bumping into a colleague and immediately apologizing for the mistake. Now, this is not an example of sexual harassment, hence the correct answer is B. Make sure that you understand that they accidentally bumped into the other employee and they immediately apologized for their mistake. They accepted that it was by mistake. Accidents happen, and that is okay because they apologized for their mistake. This is not an example of sexual harassment. If you experience sexual harassment at work, what is your most important right under POSH? Your most important right under POSH is to have confidentiality while filing a complaint. Hence, option B is the correct answer. Question number 4. What is the responsibility of the ICC? Is it to organize social events for employees? No. Investigate complaints of sexual harassment. That is the responsibility of the ICC. Repeating, ICC stands for Internal Complaints Committee. Question number 5. True or false? It is okay to tell suggestive jokes at work if everyone laughs. False. This is completely false. It is never okay to tell suggestive jokes at work, or in fact, anywhere else. You are to behave appropriately at all times. Question number 6. What is the best way to respond to unwelcome sexual advances? The best way is to confront the person directly and clearly state your discomfort. You should not ignore it. You should not spread rumors about it. You are not to leverage this and ask for a raise. You are to confront the person directly and clearly state your discomfort. Question 7, again a true false question. Unwanted physical contact, like lingering hugs, can be considered sexual harassment. This is completely true. If the physical contact is unwanted, that means you do not have the consent of the other person to make that physical contact. And this definitely comes under sexual harassment. Question 8. You witness a colleague making inappropriate comments to another employee. What should you do? You should report the incident right away to the ICC or to a supervisor. You should not ignore it. You should not offer the colleague some career advice, and you should definitely not make fun of the situation. You are to mandatorily report the incident to the ICC or to a supervisor. Question number 9. Maintaining a professional and respectful work environment is. It is a shared responsibility of all employees. It is not the responsibility of only the management. It is the responsibility of everyone that is a part of the Meru Accounting family. Last question. Meru Accounting is committed to creating a safe and respectful workplace. What can you do to contribute? Option A, participate in POSH training sessions. Option B, report any incidents of sexual harassment you might witness. Option C, maintain professional conduct with colleagues. Option D, all of the above. And the correct answer is all of the above. You are to participate, you are to report, and you are to maintain professional behavior with everybody. That is all from my side. I hope you've understood whatever we have discussed in this video. And I thank you in advance for your active participation in contributing towards making Meru Accounting a safe space for everybody. Thank you so much and have a good day ahead.